What is the gospel? That's it. That's all I'm asking you is what is the gospel? Whenever Justin and myself go out and preach on the streets, we like to ask people that say they're Christians, what's the gospel? And it's not a gotcha moment. It's not trying to be like, I want to show you I know more than you. It's that the gospel is what saves. Christians are going to disagree on things. This is just how humans are. If I hand us all the same book and tell you to read it and then tell me what you got from it, we're all going to come from it with different things. However, there's going to be a main part that we all understand from it. And that's the gospel. The gospel is the one thing every Christian that walks through the gates of the kingdom of heaven will be able to say, I believe this. So when I ask you what is the gospel, it's because this is what saves. Now, to anyone that's not aware what the gospel is, let's talk about it. The word gospel comes from a Greek term, euangelium, I believe is how you pronounce it, and it means good news. So the gospel is the good news. And whenever we talk about good news, it's important that we identify the bad news, because the bad news always makes the good news better. Let's be honest. When someone comes to you and says, hey, I got some bad news and some good news, if you don't listen to the bad news first, sometimes the good news ain't as good as it could be. So what is the bad news that sets up the good news? The bad news is that God is holy, righteous, and perfect. And this wouldn't be bad news to you if you were holy, righteous, and perfect. But it is bad news to you because you're not. You see, God is just. And if God is just, then all crimes must go punished. I mean, let's be very honest. If somebody killed your mom and then the judge said, get out of here, you're good. That's not justice. So the bad news is God is holy and righteous and just, and we're guilty. Look, we can play games with each other and we can pretend that we know all these things and we're these good people. But if any person reflects on their life, they have done things that are evil. There have been times in your life that you have coveted someone so much that you hope their failure happens. There has been times where you wanted people to be hurt, where you may have actually hurt people physically, emotionally, or in other ways. Times when you have seen something and wanted it so bad that you took it from someone. Times where we lied, times where we were selfish and greedy and prideful, and I can keep naming examples that every one of you can probably say, yeah, there's a time in my life. And that means if there's a holy and righteous God, no matter what good deeds I do in my life, I'm guilty. People like to say, well, what if you're a good person? God's going to punish a good person? But none of you would use that same type of mindset if someone who was wanted for murder was found living in some town being a good person. It doesn't matter how good you're living right now, you're guilty. Likewise, when you stand before the judge, he doesn't care about the good things you've done if you're guilty and you're there for a crime. People say, why is Christianity exclusive? Because only Jesus has enough to pay your fine. Only Jesus could have taken on your punishment. You see, the bad news is bad, but here's the good news, that God, prior to creation, already had a plan of redemption. You see, the Bible refers to God as the just and the justifier. Since God is just, he can't just look past our sins and let us go. He would no longer be just. But then how can he justify us knowing that we must be punished? Well, what if God pays our fine? Then he's just because somebody was punished, but we didn't have to pay it. Okay. What's the fine for our crime? What is the penalty for sin? It's death. Uh-oh. God can't die. How does he pay your fine, which is death? Well, God so loved the world that he said, I will put on the very flesh that they wear so I can experience death for them. So God came into the flesh, went to a sinner's death as an innocent person, and died. And if you want the clearest image on how this works, look at the Bible. Jesus stood on a stage being judged as an innocent person. And at the same time, an actual criminal stood on that same stage named Barabbas. Now, the name Barabbas is interesting. Bar Abba, meaning son of the Father. So the true Son of God stood on a stage, innocent, and went to the cross where guilty men belong, while a guilty man who is the Son of the Father is let go and is free because of what Jesus did. Likewise, every single one of us stands on that stage as a sinner. And if you stand alone, then there's a cross that you need to walk to. But if you stand with Jesus, then he goes to that cross and says, go free, my son. So the good news is that although you don't deserve it, Christ walked to your cross. He took on your shame. your punishment and your pain. People say, why is there sin? Why do we get punished? Because Adam failed. Adam should have stepped up and protected his wife. He should have said, no, get out of here, serpent, because we were told not to do this. But instead, Adam did nothing. And then when God returned, Adam blamed his wife. Jesus came as our second Adam. And this time he won't let his bride fall. This time he won't let Satan touch his wife. We are that bride. Jesus is that second Adam. And the good news is that he came to protect us and set us free. God bless and go in peace.